Hello, and welcome to this presentation about personal equipment protection. It is presented by our friends at Principal Service Solutions. The references for this presentation are the OSHA CFR 29 1910 132 and OSHA CFR 29 1910 137 and the company Personal Protective Equipment Plan. Our goals for the day are to understand the requirements for a company PPE program, understand the basic requirements for PPE, and then learn about conducting hazard analysis. When hazards are present in the workplace, the employer must ensure that proper personnel protective equipment, or PPE, is used by the employees. If employees provide their own PPE, it is the responsibility of the employer to ensure it's adequate. PPE is required when the work environment or work processes present a hazard to the body. During work where employees may come into contact with hazardous chemicals, irritants, or radiation, and it's required where the employer is unable to prevent exposure or potential exposure by using work practice controls, engineering controls, or administrative controls. The employer must assess the workplace to determine if hazards or likely hazards are present that necessitate the use of PPE. An employer must try to eliminate a hazard with administrative or engineering controls. If the hazard cannot be eliminated, then PPE can be assigned as a protective barrier. Employees must be trained on when PPE is required, what PPE is required, how to properly don, doff, adjust, and wear PPE, the limitations of PPE, and the maintenance, care, useful life, and proper disposal of PPE. Now let's talk about eye and face protection. Each employee must use appropriate eye or face protection when exposed to eye or face hazards from flying particles, molten metal, liquid chemicals, acids or caustic liquids, chemical gases or vapors, or potentially injurious light radiation. The eye and face protection must offer protection from the sides. Detachable side protectors are allowed. The employer must ensure that each affected employee wears a protective helmet when working in areas where there is a potential for injury to the head from falling objects. The employer must ensure that a protective helmet designed to reduce electrical shock hazard by each affected employee when near exposed electrical conductors that could contact the head. These helmets are usually marked with an E. In regards to hand protection, employers must select and require employees to use hand protection when employees' hands are exposed to hazards such as skin absorption of harmful substances, severe cuts or lacerations, severe abrasions, punctures, chemical burns, thermal burns, and harmful temperature extremes. The employer must ensure that each affected employee uses protective footwear when working in areas where there is a danger of foot injuries due to falling or rolling objects, objects piercing the sole, employees' feet are exposed to electrical hazards. Respirators shall be provided by the employer when such equipment is necessary to protect the health of the employee from exposure to harmful dusts, fogs, fumes, mists, gases, smokes, sprays, or vapors. Employers should consult an industrial hygienist for proper evaluation of a workplace for hazards that may require the use of respirators. Companies who utilize respirators as PPE must have a written program which includes procedures for selecting respirators for use in the workplace, medical evaluations of employees required to use respirators, fit testing procedures for tight-fitting respirators, procedures for proper use of respirators in routine and reasonably foreseeable emergency situations, procedures and schedules for cleaning, disinfecting, storing, inspecting, repairing, discarding, and otherwise maintaining respirators, procedures for regularly evaluating the effectiveness of the program, and the company must have a designated program administrator who is adequately trained to the task of running a respirator program. The employer must select an NIOSH-approved respirator that provides protection from the hazards presented in the workplace. The employer must perform an evaluation to ensure this respirator is adequate to the task. Employees must complete a medical evaluation and a fit test prior to being allowed to wear a respirator in a hazardous environment. The company has drafted a personal protective equipment plan. This plan is available through the EHS department at the site you are supporting or at the PSS EHS department. This ends this portion of the video. Now it's time to take a quiz on what you've learned. Welcome back. If you have questions involving personal protective equipment, please contact your supervisor or the EHS manager at area code 209-846-9222. We sincerely thank you for your time and attention, and we hope that you will continue to be safe in the workplace.